This media recap and post coverage of Houston Ethnic Media and FEMA Talks #Winter Ready Preparedness for Vulnerable Populations is brought to you by the CAM Agency, LLC. Nearly 40 reporters from diverse, multilingual media outlets attended the Houston Ethnic Media Roundtable on January 30th at the Southwest News Group. The event, led by FEMA, centered on educating the public about winter preparedness, especially crucial as the third anniversary of Winter Storm Uri approaches. This roundtable marked the first convening by agencies involved in natural disaster preparedness with ethnic media from across Greater Houston. During this roundtable discussion, you will see and hear from the following panelists: Tracy Brasher, FEMA Deputy Regional Administrator in Region 6, Brian Murray, Harris County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, Logan Perks, FEMA Region 6 Disability Integration Specialist, Dan Riley, National Weather Service of Houston and Galveston, and Jason Tudor, AARP Natural Disasters Manager. This roundtable discussion was in partnership and moderated by Sandy Close, Executive Director of Ethnic Media Services. Enjoy the program.
Finally, this month, a website where we can post photos and are all outward and visible signs of a increasingly connected, multi-racial, multi-ethnic media cohort working together to better inform the communities that have long been underserved in communications. And this is based on the successful model we have developed over 20 plus years in California. Now, if there's an RFP from the state for public awareness, it is mandatory that ethnic media be a critical part. But that has come from visibility, and visibility comes from a cohort rather than individual people coming out of their silos to connect to a government agency. Our speakers have time constraints, so I'm going to go right to today's subject. Every month I should tell our speakers to do a briefing, and it is a really exciting topic to deal with stormy weather and have FEMA as our co-host and sponsor, because this is news you can use writ large. So I want to introduce Mr. Ayala, Juan Ayala, who is Deputy Director, Region 6 External Affairs for FEMA. And this is really the first time I have been able to interact directly with FEMA representatives. I have asked Mr. Ayala to introduce our distinguished panel, but just one last minute, thank you to all our media colleagues. I look forward to meeting you individually over lunch after the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Ayala.
Thank you, Ms. Close, and all of you for being here today. I'm going to be speaking a bit louder, and I'll ask the panelists to do the same as we have people joining us remote as well. As she mentioned, I am with FEMA's Office of External Affairs for Region 6, which is for Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and New Mexico. I also would like to thank Mr. Lee for hosting us here at this wonderful facility, and again, each of you for taking the time to be here today. It is important to FEMA that we reach each and every American and individuals living in our country, and we want to do so in a way that is inclusive and appropriate for all audiences. So the opportunity to meet with new media is an opportunity for FEMA, and we hope just to begin. Weather Service is Dan Riley. He is a warning coordination meteorologist with the National Weather Service, Houston, Galveston area. He has been working for the National Weather Service for 30 years, 14 of those here in the Houston, Galveston area. And then I have joining us remotely the Deputy Regional Administrator for FEMA Region 6. She, in partnership with the Regional Administrator, is responsible for all FEMA work within our 5-state region. And she has been with FEMA for a number of years now, but before that, worked for the state of Texas, worked for the U.S. House of Representatives, and worked in nuclear energy weapons facility in City. So she has a long and distinguished career in emergency management, and due to her time constraints, she'll be providing some remarks, and then we'll open the floor to a couple questions directed to her. Then she will drop, and we'll open to the rest of the panel, and then open to questions from them. So with that, I would like to welcome our Deputy Regional Administrator, Tracy.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. As Juan said, I'm the Deputy Regional Administrator at FEMA Region 6. And happy to be with you here today, even though it is virtually. Let me begin by thanking Houston Ethnic Media and Executive Director Sandy Close for hosting this important event. I would also like to recognize our partners at the National Weather Service, Harris County, and the AARP. I can't think of a better forum to engage in conversations with our partners at this table, especially when it comes to being winter ready. First, before I get to the Winter Ready campaign, I first want to tell you just a little bit about myself. Juan kind of gave you my professional background, but I was just recently sworn in as a Deputy Regional Administrator in FEMA Region 6, and I'm very proud to be the Deputy Regional Administrator. I am the first woman Deputy Regional Administrator in FEMA Region 6, and also the first Asian American Pacific Islander Deputy Regional Administrator in Region 6. So extremely proud and honored to be sitting in this position today, and hope that I will have more engagements with you all in the future. I did want to mention a few enhancements and improvements to our FEMA programs, some of which have just been announced. As some of you may know, over the last few years, FEMA has prioritized equity in our approach to disaster assistance across all programs. The bottom line is we need to meet people where they are. We also want to ensure that underserved communities are receiving the help that they need to recover. Just over a week ago, we announced significant updates to our individual assistance program, which helps individuals and families recover after disasters. These changes include quicker access to needed funds, expanded eligibility for property and home repairs, and an easier application process for survivors to jumpstart the recovery from disasters. These changes are really the most significant updates to survivor assistance that FEMA has made in the last 20 years. In the past, the limitations of federal assistance have delayed disaster recovery for too many, especially those communities that are disproportionately affected by disasters. Last November, FEMA published Achieving Equitable Recovery, a post-disaster guide for local officials and leaders. This is a first-of-its-kind framework to help rebuild communities in a more accessible, inclusive, and equitable manner. These are steps in the right directions, but we still have a lot of work to do. So as I've said, we need to meet people where they are, and this time of year, that means preparing them for winter weather. Last fall, FEMA launched the first ever Winter Ready campaign to encourage everyone to prepare for hazards that come with winter weather. Everyone should be winter ready, know your winter weather risks, be fire safe, travel with supplies and precaution, and take steps now to prepare. I am sure everyone remembers the 2021 severe winter storm. It was certainly a deadly winter storm that brought snow, sleet, freezing rain, ice, and several days of extreme cold temperatures affecting millions in Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas. Impacts included frozen pipes, roadways that were either shut down or impassable, wreaking havoc for first responders, and downed electrical systems, leaving no electricity across large geographical areas that were experiencing sub-zero temperatures. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration noted that it was the coldest winter storm from Texas since 1989. Because areas in this part of the country are not accustomed to those long-lasting severe winter events, many did not know how to stay warm and safe during severe winter weather. This is why this campaign is so critical. It is imperative that we better prepare our most vulnerable populations for these type of events. Using the hashtag #WinterReady, we've been giving the public and our stakeholders, federal, state, local, and tribal emergency management partners information they need to keep their communities safe. This winter hasn't been too bad so far, but we have already had an Arctic blast, and we must not be complacent. It is just a matter of time before extreme winter weather impacts our area again. Some of the tips that we've been providing is to always remember to safely use portable generators. Portable generators emit carbon monoxide and odorless, colorless gas known as the invisible killer, causing fatalities and illnesses annually. Never use a generator indoors or in partially enclosed spaces. Follow manufacturer instructions for safe usage. Install battery-powered carbon monoxide alarms inside your home as per manufacturer's recommendations to detect dangerous levels. If you don't have a generator, you must prepare for power outages. Keep freezers and refrigerators closed. Throw away food that has been exposed to temperatures 40 degrees or higher for 2 hours or more, or that has an unusual odor, color, or texture. Do not use a gas stove or oven to heat your home. Make alternative plans for refrigerating medicines or using power-dependent medical devices. And go to a community location with power if cold is extreme and you can't heat your home. Preparedness is not just a month or even a season. We must practice preparedness year-round. Many of the tips we're talking about this winter, like generator safety, are also applicable to hurricane season. And like those of you on the Gulf Coast, we're also thinking ahead to June 1st. Developing comprehensive winter emergency plans and emergency preparedness kits tailored to our community's unique needs will ensure you are well prepared this winter. Winter preparedness can save lives. Shortly, you will hear from our regional disability integration specialist, Logan Perkins, about how we are assisting people with disabilities and older adults. Before I close, I would ask that you help us to share this message. Keeping your various audiences informed is a good opportunity for both of us to serve our communities. I would also ask you to please use our FEMA Ready website as a resource. That address is www.ready.gov. It has valuable preparedness tips for all types of disasters that impact our region, and includes helpful information for businesses, kids, people with disabilities, and older adults. Please also stay engaged with our media team who are with you today in Houston. Nakia and Juan will be your connection to FEMA going forward. We hope that this roundtable is just the start of a relationship where we work together to help our communities stay safe, informed, and prepared for the many different types of hazards they might encounter. Thank you again for the opportunity to join you today, and I believe I have time for a few questions before you move on to the rest of the panel discussion. Juan, I'll toss it back to you. Thank you very much.
I'm going to moderate the questions from the media, and I just have one quick first question. You said there were very important new initiatives by FEMA that have just been announced. Could you briefly repeat that? I think for some of us, we may not have heard that as distinctly as we need.
And Tracy, in case you didn't hear, she was asking you to repeat the new innovations that FEMA has, some of the initiatives that you spoke about, just in case some people were coming in as you were speaking. So if you can go over those again for us, briefly.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So we made significant policy changes to really increase survivor access to our assistance. These updates are the most significant updates in the last 20 years to our individual assistance program at FEMA. So a few things that we've done is streamline the application process, cutting some of the red tape, expanding eligibility, reaching more individuals, and aiding faster recovery, all while building back stronger. The changes that we've made are a direct result of feedback received from disaster survivors, states, tribes, and territories, and other stakeholders regarding the challenges disaster survivors experience following disasters. And certainly, one of the most recent policy changes is finalizing the rulemaking process, and it currently is out for public comment. So certainly Juan and Nakia could get you that information if you would like to go and look in more detail at all of the changes that FEMA has made to its policy. But some of those are certainly directed towards survivors based on their feedback of going through the FEMA process, through their application process, through the assistance that they received. One of the many important things that we did is, if you know about our previous disaster assistance, some of it was specifically tied to the Small Business Administration disaster loan eligibility, and we have now decoupled from that process. And so although disaster loans are still an important part of recovery, they no longer are dependent for our eligibility determinations for certain items. And so I think that is a huge change that we've made to benefit survivors and streamline the process and make it less complicated for them. And certainly I think Juan or Nakia can provide additional information or the link to where you can go and find the equity rule, and that is currently out for public comment and would be effective for disasters declared towards the end of March of this year.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
You had mentioned Chris.
Yes, Mr. Johnson, could you come up here? And we're bringing them a little bit closer to you over here, Tracy, so you can hear. But just to echo what Tracy said, in the recap, I will personally be sending you some of the resources that she spoke about. And so you'll get that within 24 hours of the closure of this meeting. Okay. Mr. Johnson?
Okay. Hi, Tracy. How are you? What can community organizations and media outlets do to help you guys get the message out to these communities in a more tangible way?
I think there's a number of things that we're doing. I think one, engaging with us is just a start, right, and having this roundtable discussion, but then echoing some of the things that we put out in our Winter Ready campaign using the hashtag Winter Ready, focusing citizens to our ready.gov website and encouraging them to prepare for disasters. Most of the time when these things happen, your neighbor or someone close to you is going to be the first person who might be able to help you. And so the more prepared you are to help yourself, the more prepared you are to help others until other help can arrive. And so we really encourage individuals to go to ready.gov, use the checklist and the items contained in there so that they can prepare themselves, so that they are better informed, better prepared on how to survive in any type of disaster, but then also really prepared to help their neighbor. And also, they know in their neighborhood who are those elderly people who may need additional assistance, check on them.
Right.
Check on your neighbors. Really, response and recovery starts at the local level. And so we really need at the local level that preparedness to be ingrained in individuals. And boy, kids are a great way, right? Kids will go home and tell their parents and tell their grandparents. So kids is another way to reach the citizens to get them more prepared for events like this Winter Readiness Campaign.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you so much. I think there's a great story here on what the FEMA changes mean for small business. And that is, we already have a request from one of our media at the table for an interview opportunity on the air this Saturday. So I think we're generating, this is in a way an editorial brainstorm, but when you hear a topic, you hear a theme, you hear a talking point that directly relates to our audiences, call it out, help each other. We're all in this together. And what I heard is that too often ignored topic of small business, who are really the lifeblood for many of us of our media revenue base. Okay, thank you so much for your opening remarks and your overview. We are going next to Brian Murray, who is Harris County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, otherwise known HCOEM. Yes, maybe you could tell us how to pronounce that.
We got a bunch. We don't have a subject, it's HCOHSEM. And I'm tripping myself a little bit every time I say it, so don't about it.
Okay, you have to speak loudly and slowly, because some of us are multilingual, but not necessarily totally fluent in English.
Understand. So, what I'd like to contribute to this today is really to help you understand a little bit more about what the local level means. Because it's an axiom of disaster management that all disasters are local. If it happens in your house and you drop a bottle of orange juice on the floor, that's a local disaster. When it happens in Harris County in southeast Texas and you put 3 trillion tons of water on it in the summer of 2017, that's a local disaster. But those local disasters obviously have big impacts. The biggest challenge that we have, and I'm speaking as someone who, we have a very vital public information and communication effort, is that we are very, very, very good at communicating in English. We are pretty good at communicating in Spanish. We're okay in ASL. We're not so very good at languages. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, apparently translation is very expensive. We're looking at upwards of 30 to 50 cents a word to have a document translated. And if you look at what that means on the biggest scale, if we're sending out 300 and 400 word messages during a disaster, you're adding up some pretty serious money really quickly. So that's kind of a frightening thing. When I became the communication supervisor 5 years ago, my goal was within 2 years to have us communicating on all media in 5 languages. I want English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Arabic. That's basically the top 5 in Harris County. You can go back and forth between Arabic and Urdu to see which one's the highest, but we just made a call in for it. I'd like to do more, but to be frank with you, I'd like to master 5 first and to make sure we can do that confidently. And it's been very, very difficult. We do almost all of our social media in all 5 languages because that's easy. And we do take advantage of machine translation. As much as that gives me heartburn, my options are not great. I suspect AI may have been a better partner for that than Google Translate at some point. The testing we've done seems to indicate that, but I'm not ready to sign off on that. It's a struggle. It's a struggle for us. It's a struggle for us when we do outreach to reach different communities. We're one of the only emergency management agencies, this part of Texas that actually does American Sign Language and Braille. It's very easy. We may be hire a company to do it. It's ridiculously expensive, but it's worth it. Because somewhere between 20 and 30% of the population has some sort of sensory loss that means that they need that sort of assistance. But the problem is, the deaf community is very, very insular. They rely on each other for everything. Just how do we break into that community so we're not trying to flip them into that service way on? We get some of the same situations in other ethnic communities, whether that's Asian, whether that's African, no matter where they come from, the situation's the same. People tend to rely on each other. So what we've really been trying to do is work very closely with our nonprofit partners because most of them do have inroads to those communities. It's not perfect, it's not always pretty, but the difference between what we do now and what we did during Harvey, much less Hurricane Ike, is night and day. The winter storm of 2021, as I said, was a huge disaster. And I'm not sure which disaster we're talking about. The part where the lights went out for 5 days or the part where we froze over. So someone can clarify which was the actual disaster there. I actually think it was better than the lights, just going to say that. But we were able to reach out and help people much more quickly than we were in the past. We were able to partner with the folks at FEMA much more quickly to get information. They actually took care of the printing of things in multiple languages for us and got that out at the centers where they were helping people. But the biggest challenge that we have every day is figuring out how to get inroads into our different communities, whether it's ethnic communities, racial communities, whatever. That is our biggest challenge. I'm really hoping I can hear some things from some folks today that'll help give us some clues on how to do that better. Because it's a community, whether it's the biggest part of Houston, the smallest part of Houston, we're all interdependent, and every single person's recovery affects their neighbor's recovery. So that's my thing today.
Thank you for being so transparent about language access challenges. I would just say in California, with the Department of Emergency Services and various other state and local agencies, ethnic media, in-language media began by translating for these departments when there was some advertising support for the effort. It is very difficult at this point, after the pandemic has clobbered so much of the revenue base of many of our media with the closure of small business and other changes. It's very difficult to do everything pro bono. So this month, we're doing a very limited but important public awareness ad buy for BARC. And while BARC is the Humane Society on Stray Dogs, it has a lot of public interest, and that immediate sort of experience factor that is important. So it's a pilot, and Mr. Murray, we may want to share with you the results of that. It draws on very successful experiences with ethnic media and emergency services, among others, in California. But the point of today, in many ways, is to showcase the extraordinary access ethnic media want to provide in a kind of one bill, one buy way, so that you're not completely inundated with multiple requests and multiple interpreting. The translation costs are often beautifully carried out by who knows better than the language skills of ethnic media.
Right.
So I think this is the start of a very important conversation, and I really appreciate the transparency and the effort your department is making. One quick question and then ask others for questions. Do you have multilingual people on your staff? Because the broadcast media here is also a very important panel.
We have multiple people on our staff that are, fluent in Spanish and English. Spanish is, that's frankly an easy one for us. We have at least another couple people that can contribute in some ways where we lack those in the larger groups, whether that's Chinese or Vietnamese. I do not have that. That would be, the ideal would be to have,
But those are bridges that can be crossed. Mr. Lee?
Yeah, let me say something. Thank you, Sandy. This is the first time officially we could make such a federal, local, thing. But let me ask you this. I want to say that International Management District, I've been chair for the last 20 years. We were more than happy to help you to translate in different languages. Because I've been personally printing many language newspapers in my printing press. It's not the issue. The issue is that we need to have the continuous this kind of meeting with your guy to let our people know. As you know, 25 years ago, in this road on Bel Air Boulevard, it's a road land. But today we really create most new immigrants coming this part of town. So, Brian, I will guarantee you the International Management District will help you free of charge to translate everything wherever you want, okay? Because we as a nonprofit, we are taking care of this area. We have a $1.7 million budget, for doing all those things. This is the first time I heard of a language problem. We're going to take care for you, okay?
Okay, this is also a news conference, so we're gathering both the challenges and the opportunities, and then it's a brainstorm. So I know this is not your normal mainstream news conference where we as journalists gotcha, right? No, this is more a community engagement to leverage our audience reach for agencies such as yours to better inform people. So our next speaker is Logan Kurtz, FEMA Region 6 Disability Integration Specialist. And as the first speaker, Tracy Brasher, made clear, targeting people with disabilities, and all of us who grow old eventually have disabilities. So I have a huge stake in this. This is a primary challenge during very serious weather conditions. So thank you, Logan, for joining us, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for having me. And I have...
Excuse me, I have to speak up.
Yeah.
I thought next time we'll get microphones, but the acoustics are very good if you speak up.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today. And I have a lot prepared, so I'll start with just a little bit, and then we can go around and maybe come back to some of the other things I have. So I'll share kind of what FEMA's role is in preparedness planning for older adults and people with disabilities. And as I say, it's a privilege to grow old. So I think that's something to be it's something to be thankful for, because the alternative is not the best thing. But here in Region 6, we are affiliated with the Headquarters Office of Disability Integration and Coordination. And that office was created to improve the outcomes for people who need extra assistance during a disaster. And so that includes people with disabilities and older adults. So here in the region, we're lucky enough to have 4 disability integration specialists. We're the only region in the country that has 4 people in this role. And so we help prepare people with disabilities and older adults for severe weather, natural disasters, and accessing community resources. Should I put this on? No, I'm okay? Okay.
I was just recording.
Okay. And our disability integration specialists support state, local, and tribal government with training and technical support to ensure people with disabilities are included in disaster planning and response. We also work with local nonprofits and agencies to do community outreach. So I'll just give you some context. The U.S. Census reports that 13% of the population has a disability, but the Center for Disease Control says that number is up to 27%.
So there's a difference between 13% and 27%.
Yes.
Double.
And a lot of that is because people think about disability differently, right? I think the U.S. Census has a very strict criteria for how they consider it. Center for Disease Control has a broader criteria. I think the CDC is probably more accurate. That would be my opinion.
Could I ask, how does that impact FEMA's services for people with disabilities? Ms. Brasher said that categories regarding small business, for example, were opening up. Is FEMA opening up what you consider to be vulnerable as a person with disability?
So our funding isn't based on the number, a census number, so that it's not impacted. We have a lot of special programs where people can receive extra money for disability. For example, if after a disaster, certain items in their homes were damaged that are related to their disability, they can receive extra financial assistance for those items.
These are the kind of details that really help us inform our audiences. So thank you.
Sure.
I didn't mean to interrupt your flow.
Oh, no problem. There's also in our public assistance program, and some of these are technical, so we can provide you with more information after. When people are rebuilding buildings, businesses, government buildings, if those buildings were not ADA accessible prior to the disaster damage, they can receive extra funding to make the buildings ADA accessible. And so that's another benefit that FEMA has to help improve the lives of people with disabilities. So now I'm just going to go into some numbers. So $943. That's the maximum federal SSI monthly benefit that a lot of people who have disabilities live off of. And then $291 is the maximum SNAP benefit that a lot of people with disabilities receive. $1,907 is the average Social Security retirement check. $9,000 is the average cost of a generator and installation. And so that's not factoring in maintenance and repairs. So I just want people to think about if that's a viable option for a lot of retired people or people with disabilities.
Those are very dramatic disparities.
Yeah. So I think it's really important that FEMA does talk about generators and generator safety. And many people can afford to get a generator, but a lot of times people with disabilities and older adults who are retired or low income, it's not something they would be able to afford. And it's also not applicable to people who live in apartments. So I'll stop there. I have a lot more tips, but...
Let's ask some questions, because you have your finger on such important information that impacts older adults, and many of us reach older adults who may or may not have disabilities, but it's all sort of a common group questions.
I have one. This is home for me because my mother right now is sick and bedridden, but we're blessed enough to have generators and stuff like that. But she does have nurses that come every day and change, treatment rooms for bed sores. Even if she had to leave, if she's one of those people that they were not able, some of the people can't just chill at the house because they don't have that. How would people get like medical assistance in a disaster? People who need medical care every day. Okay, we get them out of the house, we get them to a safe location, a warm location. What about their well-being after that part?
Right. Yeah, so one of the things to factor in, it's on my list for preparedness, is if someone has a caregiver or provider that comes into the home and they know that a storm is coming, they should have a discussion with that caregiver or provider. What are we gonna do? Or if the roads are, blocked. So what some people did, like for Winter Storm Uri, which Tracy Brasher referenced, a lot of people were completely caught off guard. So they went without their caregiver or provider for 5 or 7 days. And so other people, their caregiver or provider was stranded at their house, which also is not ideal because they're separated from their family. So a lot of these, there's not an easy solution. These are systemic problems, but having those discussions ahead of time to see with the caregiver provider that if there's things they can do to prepare, like if they can leave extra medication or if they can train other family members to do some of those tasks while they're out just on a temporary basis.
Who does one, Mr. Murray, if in Chris's home, his mother gets stranded, he's miles away, can't get there, does she or he call your office? Who do you call, I guess, when that situation, and that was such a real problem with the great storm?
Yeah, so let me address both of those if I could, and if I run too long, I apologize. No, not us. We are not usually the ones you will call for that. That is usually a 911 call. However, the circumstance you're describing, especially when you're talking about a storm, the state of Texas has an emergency assistance registry that is created specifically for that issue. And what we have done here, and this is one area where I feel like we've been very proactive, we have a list of, 14,000 tier registries in the Houston area? In any event, there's a very long list of people who have registered for STEER. State passed a law last year that says following a disaster, given certain circumstances like loss of power, first responders are required to reach out to people who are registered on this list to assess whether or not they have urgent needs. What we have done, and we've done consistently, including during Winter Storm of 2021, we actually made proactive phone calls to those people who are registered just to say, hey, this is what's coming. This would be a good time for you to make sure that your emergency plans are valid and you're ready to go in case something happens. In the event we did have something that had something like the 2021 storm, we would actually send the information for those people down through the fire departments on the local level so that they could actually go and physically touch these folks and make sure they're okay. But the direct question is, it's a 911 call right now.
But Chris, I just want to know, did you know to register?
No.
No? Okay, great, yes. I wanted to ask,
I'm sorry.
did you want to carry on that point?
Yes.
Jay,
yes.
From Indo-American News.
My name is Jay Malhotra. I represent the South Asian community. I publish a paper called Indo-American News. And we are also on the radio. Something that I wanted to ask both of you, Logan as well as Brian, but it's a general question. There seems to be an obstacle in getting through your message across. What you just pointed out about the emergency assistance registry, I was not aware of at all. And yet, I'm one of the old-fashioned guys that still get Legion Chronicle in the house for the last 45 years. And I didn't see anything like that in the Chronicle either. So, bless Legion Business and the other ones, because, they're very specialized. But the point is that if you're reaching out to the ethnic media, I don't get the message. I have not received these messages. I don't get the TSAs. And if, by the way, something that Sandy mentioned about pro bono strikes really at the heart of what we do. A TSA which is paid gets more attention, obviously, because we have limited time, limited space. But how do you reach out to us if you don't even know that we exist?
And that's what today is for, it's not.
Right,
and
we've been around here for like 50 years.
I know, Jay, I have to say this is true in California. The leading state agencies looked at our expo and said, wow, I never knew there were so many and it was so big.
Right, but we have great restaurants when we go out to eat.
Right. Anyway, this is an important conversation to have. So thank you for being here. Part of today is to learn that what it is we don't know.
Yes.
You don't know what you don't know. And today is sparking all sorts of connections to what we don't know. So also you guys are generous because you're offering yourselves as sources that if we tag and email to you, met you at the HIM round table, you'll respond.
Yes.
Okay, we have time for one more question before we go to our next speaker. Please.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here today and to address us. My name is Alexis Jones. I'm a local news TV producer. I wanted to ask, what's the emergency plan for the homeless population with a disability here in Houston? As a citizen who may be aware of a storm coming, because I hear it on the news, and I'm also trying to prepare my family, who do I call as a citizen if I see somebody that's homeless also with a disability that needs assistance? And I ask that because I actually saw this recently driving on the freeway, an older gentleman, senior citizen in a wheelchair. This is their memorial, and we knew the winter storm was coming in, and my son was in the car, and he really asked me, Mom, like, where can he go to get warm? And I was like, that's really a good question. I don't know who to call. I don't know if it's 911. I didn't know who to call to let someone know, because he was hit with both whammies, right? He's in a wheelchair, he has nowhere to go, he's homeless, and really 3 because he was a senior citizen. I just kept thinking that somebody can come pick him up. So I was just wondering what the plan is, or as a citizen when I'm driving, who do I call to get that person assistance?
Can we go to both of you because you're being so helpful? You first.
I can answer on behalf of the county. So the situation you're describing of, you see somebody who's homeless who may need assistance, I actually believe that would be a phone call to 311 as opposed to 911, and they will be able to help coordinate that. The bigger question of your plan, 2 weeks ago when we were looking at the, potential deep freeze here, the biggest single concern that we had was our homeless population. And the reason for that is pretty obvious. I mean, these people who are generally outside, do not necessarily have resources. So we do a couple things. Number one, the Harris County Sheriff's Office has a homeless outreach team that will go out and proactively seek people out. They will offer them as possible supplies. They will also take them to missions and other shelters as they're available. We also work with some of the other agencies that specialize in helping the people, and especially families who are experiencing homelessness, to try and get them into indoors as best they can. That's obviously limited, but there's a lot that goes on to try and proactively reach out to those communities. That includes not only the folks that you may see downtown, but there's numerous encampments of people experiencing homeless throughout the county. They will go out there, determine what the need is, and try to make as many, make arrangements for as many people as possible. It's important to know they will go out and they say, hey, do you want help? Because they can't force them to do anything and they won't do that. But there's an extensive effort that goes into that before each and every large-scale incident, certainly a weather incident that we're aware of.
Does FEMA have any services in the aftermath of a major weather event that are specifically aimed at supporting unhoused people?
So in terms of FEMA, we get involved in terms of the broader agency when there's a federally declared disaster in terms of financial support. In my specific role, I can provide more proactive services that doesn't have to be during a federally declared disaster. And so that's how my role is a little bit different than a lot of other people within FEMA. So to answer this specific question, it would be handled at the local level. So Brian already did a good job of addressing it, but I can use this to plug the FEMA app, because I don't know if you already have it, but the FEMA weather app is excellent for weather alerts, but it also has shelters, and so it posts any warming centers. So if you see anyone that you feel like would benefit from a warming center, if you have that app downloaded, if you open it, it'll show you any type of shelter that's open in your immediate vicinity, so you can share that information. But there are a lot of innovation from local, county and state emergency management agencies, especially on the West Coast, on helping unhoused populations. But in terms of FEMA, since we're at the federal level, we're not really doing much on that.
Okay, that's very helpful. Now we get the weather forecast. This is extremely relevant in developing our coverage today, and I want to welcome Dan Riley with the National Weather Service Houston, Galveston, to the speaker table.
All right, thank you very much. And to the previous questions, I want to add the City of Houston has some parallel things going on with warming centers. Brian speaks for Harris County, but City of Houston has their own procedures and so on when it comes to that. As far as the National Weather Service, we just heard a scenario where someone was caught off guard and they weren't able to take action. And that's our role, is to let people know what to expect with the weather. That is our lane. We work very closely with FEMA, with Harris County, and the media. And we want to work more closely with Houston ethnic media. All our briefings go out to everyone I mentioned, including the English and Spanish language media. We have some Spanish language speakers on staff, including Janice here, one of our forecasters. But we want to make better inroads to the communities you all serve. And so first off, I want to add you all to our media list. And what you'll get is storm-specific information in a one-page bulleted format. And I want you to look at that. It's in English, but there may be some kernels in there that you can relay to your communities. We also, very much like Brian said, we want to work more closely in preparedness materials. And I love the things that have been said here about willingness to partner in those translation efforts and so on. So another thing I want to mention, we have preparedness guides that include things like the STEER program. Within that guide, we have that in English and Spanish.
What is that program specifically?
That was discussed. The STEER, it's basically people that need assistance can register.
But the acronym.
State of Texas Emergency Assistance Registry.
No, I'm glad we have others on the panel because I forgot myself. So that's just one idea. Maybe we can create a guide in various languages. Now, the City of Houston has some preparedness guides in Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and so on. But maybe we could do better than that and work as a group. Maybe we could partner with Harris County and Houston Ethnic Media to come up with materials that can serve your communities. We really do want to engage, and I'm hearing a really willingness to engage from the group here, and that's why we're here today. Another thing I want to mention on the National Weather Service side for communicating, there is a website, weather.gov/translate, and that's an effort to take Weather Service products and by AI translate them into different languages. Right now the Houston office is not part of that experiment, but that will change soon. We expect to be added to Spanish and Vietnamese. Now, once that effort is underway, it would be important to quality control that, to have Vietnamese speakers, for example, that can look at the translated materials and give feedback and say, hey, that's just not right, that's not accurate. So those are a couple of things.
Could I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Are your press releases announcing what's happening with the weather, are they daily? Are they social?
Great question. We have an emailed weather briefing list that is event driven. In other words, if there's a significant storm coming, whether it's a flood or a freeze or a hurricane, we will send that information out to emergency managers, to media, and to other key partners.
Could I just see a show of hands? Who gets those among our Spanish language media does, and a couple of other, but this is kind of like an open.
And that's why that was my first point. I would like everyone's hands to be up after this meeting. Let's exchange business cards. We'll get you on that list so you can at least evaluate that information and see how it may be useful for you all. We can also do interviews. Of course, we can't do it other than English and Spanish. But we're happy to. Thank you.
Add me to your list.
Oh, thank you.
Add me to your list.
Mr. Price is making certain, but we will also send everybody a curated list of all these great media reps.
But those are just two ideas, real-time interactions ahead of storms, so you're not caught off guard. To give you an example, ahead of Uri, it was talked about, where we lost power and people had trouble heating their homes. Weather Service was putting out graphics before that on how to stay warm if you lose power. So for people that get that, that's helpful. But if people don't get that messaging, we want to change that. We want to reach out through all our communities here in Houston, as was already discussed. So that's really my main motivation for being here, is develop these relationships and get that communication going.
For the sake of our news coverage of today, can you hint at what is likely to be the weather over the next
I just don't know. No, I'm just as far as the actual weather, what are we dealing with? Well, in wintertime with an El Nino, which is a climate pattern in the southern U.S., we typically are wetter than average in the wintertime, and perhaps near average when you average over the whole winter. But you'll often have frequent highs and lows. So if you look in the rearview mirror, we just went through a very wet month in January. And that's very typical of the El Nino pattern we're in. We also had that week of very cold temperatures. And again, that's not unusual either. to get, the last 3 years, we've had very cold weeks here in Houston, down well below freezing. In this particular case, just a few weeks ago. So going forward, what are we looking at? The next 10 days or so look relatively dry. We do have another rain event coming in Friday night and Saturday. Not nearly the amount of rain we had with the last go around. So we wouldn't expect too much impact from that, but we'll have to watch for any kind of isolated street flooding. And then if you look further out for the month of February, our Climate Prediction Center is calling for above average precipitation and below average temperatures on average. So as always, when you get beyond about 1 week, it's hard to be too specific, but that's kind of the general sense at what we're looking at weather-wise. No major impacts, but the next storm system being Friday night and Saturday, we'll have to watch for maybe some street flooding with that.
Do you wake up at night worried about extreme weather due either to El Nino or climate change?
Good question. I do worry ahead of a specific storm. For example, the winter storm Uri that was mentioned, because we knew we were facing snow, ice, extreme cold, and that we could lose power and water. So we knew that was a life-threatening situation. So that does keep me up at night. Same thing with a storm like Harvey, where you know it's going to be an extreme flood. How do you communicate that to everyone? Make sure they're aware that they're not off guard. So that's where we sit as Weather Service forecasters. This is where you all can help us, I think, in getting that word out to a larger audience. As far as El Nino and climate change, that's the climate change part of it is a very slow process. So I think we're more focused on week-to-week weather events. Then that part of it doesn't necessarily keep me up at night, but individual storms certainly do. And again, you all can help us a great deal by letting more people know what's coming.
Thank you. Any questions before we move to our final speaker? And there will be a chance I will ask you guys questions at the last Q&A session. But any more questions about the weather from Mr. Bynum? Just imagine we get to ask the weatherman questions. Very exciting. Yes.
Thank you for updating us. I'm Saeed Gary, and I have 2 radio stations that covers almost like 200 miles outskirts of Houston, including Houston. I'd like to find that out. First, Sandy, I really request to give them our email addresses and all this stuff so we can get the information. Yes. Okay. Now, when we are broadcasting this thing on our radio channel, especially in my case, do we have to own that thing that we get it from the weather center, or I mean, how do we give this information to the community so that they can see that this is a very authentic place? So how do we play that thing, or how do we give this information? Do we have the permission to do that?
Yes, you would receive that in English, and you're certainly free. That's public information, so you could relay that in any language.
We're not going to be sued for copyright infringement.
No, not at all. This is all intended for public release, so there's nothing protected about that at all. And if you need clarification on any element of it, give us a call, and we'll describe what we're intending by a certain message.
So we will have the right to mention that coming from the weather center, and this is what it is, so that because people sometimes they want to see that this is authentic or not.
Absolutely, the National Weather Service. So that that's our role is to be that sort of trusted weather voice. So yes, please refer to us, and we would definitely want that.
Last question before we move, or do you want to save it for the round?
I have a question. So kind of you're a meteorologist, that's your term?
Yeah.
So like what kind of tools are y'all implementing to find this information? Is it something that y'all use collectively as a nation with America, or is it something localized and we're relying on our south side type of sensor?
Yeah, great question. Our area of responsibility is 23 counties in southeast Texas, from Houston, Galveston, out to College Station, and over toward Livingston. And so we're focused on that, but there's 122 other field offices that are also forecasting for their area. And then we have national centers that we're coordinating with, the Hurricane Center, for example. And so, it's kind of a web of meteorologists, but our focus is we have about 15 or so meteorologists on our staff, including Janice and Jeff here, that are working the desk 24 hours a day, 3 different shifts, and, looking at a variety of things, radar, computer modeling, satellite data, and that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Just because of the interest of time,
Sure.
and we want to leave about 10 minutes for roundtable observations, thoughts, recommendations. We're going to go now to AARP. And just for historical reference, I mentioned this to AARP guests today. When we started in California back in 1997, New California Media, the very first government agency, and in this case a nonprofit, let's just say Washington-based nonprofit.
Definitely not government.
Said, hey, we want to be there, we want to sponsor you. And I didn't even know what sponsorship involved was AARP. So there's a special fondness on my part for welcoming the speaker from AARP.
Thank you.
Mr. Tudor.
Thanks, Sandy. I appreciate the invitation to be here. AARP, for those that don't know, is a national nonprofit membership organization that advocates and provides service and education for people 50 and older. We have 38 million members. With here in Texas, we have 2.6 million, and in Houston, the city of our Harris County area, we have 600,000 members. Why does this matter? We have immediate access to those members through our communication channels. We can share partner information, including our own information, but also our partner information. I'm here today to talk about why disaster resilience and disaster preparedness is important to AARP. If you remember back in 2017, the Houston area experienced the worst, most disastrous flooding in its history. But Houston wasn't the only place in the United States or in North America that was affected that year by disasters. We also had the hurricanes in Florida and in Puerto Rico, where we saw nursing home patients in Puerto Rico die in their beds because they were without power for over 10 days. We saw thousands of Puerto Ricans die in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria because of lack of access to power and emergency services. And then shortly after that, in the following year, we saw in the Camp Fire in California, people dying in their homes, in their wheelchairs, burning to death because they couldn't evacuate. AARP said enough. We have to change the way older adults are included in emergency planning and disaster resilience education and services. So we, the following year, partnered with FEMA and said, let's figure out what's going wrong. What are the gaps in education and what are the gaps in planning that we need to fill so that this doesn't happen again? And so over the course of 2 years, we researched the issues from Harvey to the Paradise Fire to the issues in Florida and Puerto Rico. And we came out with the Disaster Resilience Toolkit. That can be found at aarp.org/disaster resilience. It's a free PDF you can download. It's also mobile site accessible. And it lists all the issues that we had identified that pertain to older adults and why they're disproportionately impacted by disasters. In the Great Freeze here in Texas, over 60% of the deaths were people 60 years and older. In Katrina, over 70% of the deaths were people 65 years and older. And there are reasons why that they're disproportionately impacted. And what we're doing now with our partnership with FEMA and the American Red Cross is taking those gaps and figuring out a way to resolve them. So for example, you had mentioned earlier, I forgot your name, I'm sorry.
Todd.
Todd had mentioned, what do I do? I'm a caregiver for my mother. She lives at home. What do I do if we need to evacuate? What do we do to prepare? This is an issue that we're finding all over the place because one of the challenges is that we found is that disaster planning is really focused on long-term care facilities and institutional care, but only about 5% of people over 60 live in long-term care settings. The vast majority live at home and they're being helped or taken care of by their family members. So we've got to do a better job of educating people where they are and connecting to them the resources that they're available to them. We also need to do a better job of making sure that there are resources for them to go to. So are our shelters prepared to take in caregivers? If they aren't willing to go to a shelter, are we willing to put up the money to make sure that they can go to a hotel? Because what we have found is that older adults are more willing to evacuate if they know that there's a specific hotel room that they're going to go to. If not, they're going to stay at home. So in Florida, for example, they're putting out the money to make sure that there's plenty of hotel rooms available, and they're prioritizing older adults to make sure that they have access to them. So there's plenty of different ways that we can start addressing this. We're just at the beginning of it. So where AARP stands is we're offering all of our communication channels available to our partners, whether it's FEMA, Red Cross, county officials, to access our members through email, text messages. We have teletown hall services. We can host and sponsor media conferences, whatever it may be. But I think communication is one of the key pieces that we can really support with that.
Could I ask one question and then ask people?
Repeat that web address again.
Sure. It's aarp.org/disaster resilience. And I apologize that I didn't put that on your handout that you have in front of you. That would have been really helpful, but aarp.org/disaster
I had a
resilience.
question right at the tip of my tongue and I've lost it. Who has a question?
Great. So I wanted to follow up on that. I was really pleased that you mentioned the collaboration that AARP has with FEMA. And that's what, 2 years old, you said?
3 years.
3 years. Could something like this be done with like-minded people within our own communities? Some sort of networking situation like that? Because it's impossible for you guys to reach all the people in our community. And you know, so there's people left out. I know during the Uri, there were people who were fanned out doing their own little thing. But if it could be a little bit better organized, it might help. And we may be able to play a better role in spreading that word out.
It's actually a really great recommendation, and that's included in the Resilience Toolkit, that local either roundtables, advisory panels are set up with local governments and regional FEMA offices to identify what specifically in your own community is unique that's challenging to a specific community, because every community has unique challenges. So we can say broadly what's happening nationally, but it's going to take the community to come together to identify what's unique to Harris County or to Dallas County.
The Southeast Asian community in California have phone trees. And Jeanette at Boat People SOS told me her experience here in Houston on voter education. They brought in 6 senior citizens and then about 25 students. And they paid them to do outreach. Guess what? The seniors in 4 weeks finished what they projected would take 4 months. Why? Seniors were much more effective. They love using phones. Yes, I can attest. People don't hang up on them. And they were totally devoted. So suddenly, just to build on Jay's idea, using older adults as phone banks or phone trees might be a very good way to go. I remembered my question. How do you become an AARP member? Is it something you have to pay for? And if it is, are there discounts?
Yes, so that's our member services group, and I work for our nonprofit advocacy piece. It's a big organization with multiple pieces, but it is a membership organization, about $13 a year. It's open to anyone who's 18 or older, and your membership dollars go to things like the work that we're doing here at FEMA, but a lot of people join because of the discounts. So we have partner organizations from United Healthcare for healthcare discounts to Avis for rental car discounts to Cellular One, or I can't remember what our cellular partner is. Absolutely, that's one of the reasons why people join.
I was in Orlando this past 2 weeks ago. They didn't get a layer on people's.
Avis did not?
Disney did.
Oh, Disney. No, that's not one of our partners.
Okay, we have time for 3 questions, and then we're going to open it up for all speakers. You were next.
Yes,
You were next.
From Black Press
We've
USA.
got a number. Okay, let's just go to it. This is the general roundtable Q&A.
Okay.
Go for it.
Great. We're kicking it off. And you guys have free towing, so that's amazing as well. Totally Randy from Black Press USA and TotallyRandy.com. I want to ask you, I heard that you guys are working a lot with the local, and I know you two, Dan and Brian, you're here locally. You're working a lot on the local level, but I did kind of hear that there's probably some still red tape. Have you guys identified any opportunities that you can leverage now to work with the federal and the national level can work with the local level to make the process a little bit more smoother and just kind of continue to help people?
I'll jump into something that FEMA and ARP are working on at a national level that will help at the local level. So one of the main issues that we found after 2017, 2018 was the amount of applications a resident has to fill out in order to receive disaster assistance. There's a bill going through Congress right now that ARP is behind, that FEMA has helped write, which makes that into one application now. So once that bill is passed, then if there's a disaster, residents will only have to fill out one application to access all the available disaster recovery funding available to them. So that's, I think, one example of how national partnerships can look at a local issue, because that's a very personalized issue that can be improved.
And just to follow up really fast, I'm in the digital sector, so a lot of our information and a lot of the way that we reach the audience is digitally. So it's social media, it's digital streaming platforms. Have you guys thought about the way you creatively storytell or create content to get the messaging out to reach that audience as well?
So from the people perspective, if I can, we have a YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook. We are on many different aspects of social media, and we encourage you to use what we post on social media and share with your own audiences. And if there's ways where we can help tailor some of the messaging we've had to your specific audiences, we're open to doing so as well. So that's the kind of collaboration we'd like to do.
That's what I was looking for. I was saying, do you guys collaborate so that we can reach the audience in that way? That's great.
That's great. Yes, Mr. Ryan.
Same with us, Weather Service. I should have mentioned that. That's a big emphasis for us. Social media, clear graphical, plain language posts. Also, we do weather briefings live for big events for emergency managers, and we record those and put those on YouTube. And those have gotten a lot of play as well. So definitely follow our social media channels also.
Okay, you're next.
Hello, my name is Evelyn Castro. I am from North and South Houston. And one of my questions is, I know you guys have been naming all these digital aspects that you guys communicate with. Do you guys do any direct, advertisement buy or outreach with the newspapers that are the ones that reach those hard to reach within our community? Through a Comcast, not Surrey, but they did something that within Houston, it said that there's a lot of kids and elderly people that don't have internet access. So those are the hard to reach that we reach. Do you guys do anything towards, that aspect of it?
Yeah, we take many calls from newspapers and give newspaper interviews. We also have them on our media list, so they'll get the material and sometimes carry that over to print.
So this is the gate opener opportunity. Thank you. Go ahead, AARP.
I think what you're setting me up to do is to say one of the services that we can offer is our county, our regional, or our national partners. If you have messages that you want out into ethnic media services, one of the things that we can do is put our resources behind that to help amplify that and make sure it gets there. So make sure to let us know so that we can help you get the messages out.
That's great. We have time. 3 people raised their hands, so I want to call on them. Lorenzo and
I'm Lorenzo Bobo, used to former in the paper here, Southern Chinese Daily News. I'm a former disability advocate for the city of Houston.
This is Mr. Lorenzo Butler. Yeah.
Give me one more time. What? It's 900,000 people with disabilities according to the mayor's office. How do I communicate through our papers what disabilities need to do?
I can't hear you.
Or with FEMA?
Could you repeat the question?
How do we communicate to 900,000 people with disabilities like myself? What you just said, it was 2 things that people with disabilities and their caregivers need to do in a disaster.
So I have a list. I didn't get to it because there was so much good discussion here, but I have a list of specific planning considerations for people with disabilities, factoring in, potentially limited resources. Because unfortunately, I like to plan for not being able to rely on emergency responders providing assistance. So I'll give you a couple examples because I know that we don't have time. So one of the things that people with disabilities would be a good practice is to have a written list of emergency contacts, medications they take, and any medical information first responders may need to know in case something did happen in an emergency. And then always request a 90-day supply of medications. That way they have extra on hand in case there's severe weather and they can't leave the home. And then when they're building their emergency kit, they can purchase items over time because, as I mentioned before, some people are living off of $900 a month, so they can't, spend $100 buying food and supplies all at one time. And then if physical assistance is needed, shutting off water to the house, carrying bottled water, transporting medical equipment, identify a person ahead of time who may be able to help. So that could be a neighbor, a family member, a friend who could maybe come over before a storm was coming and help do some of those items.
This would be a remarkable news you can use. I hate to say it, advertorial that all of us could run. It's so specific and so helpful.
And, you can reach out to our news desk and ask for an interview with a FEMA spokesperson to talk specifically about of the needs of the disabled community and what resources are available for that specific disaster.
What's the web address for the news desk so we can all...
So we'll provide both a phone number and email address for the news desk. The phone number is 940-898-5454.
Can you say that again, please?
940-898-5454 is the Region 6 news desk phone number. We'll also provide you an email address.
Okay.
And then how do we get on that list so we get the
We're going to get the list of everyone here, and we're going to add you one to the sheets.
Yes, please.
I also want, on the local level, one of the things that, I want to make sure you leave here with is the understanding that there are local resources on the web as well. www.readyharris.org was basically created as a one-stop shop for information. It may not cover every single topic you're interested in, but we have links from all of our partners, whether that's the National Weather Service, that's FEMA, That is the Harris County Flood Control District, if you want to know what the bayou conditions are. So there's a lot of information on there that is specific to disaster preparedness, whether that's building a checklist, whether that's how to make a plan. We've even done some things featuring Olivia, the preparedness opossum, who targets her information at children. So we've tried to do a lot to reach a lot of people. In addition to that, there's a contact us button. If there's specific information that you're looking for, or you just want to, start a dialogue with us, click that contact us button. It'll lead you to a place to fill out a form, and we will absolutely respond to you.
Did you have a comment?
Yes, I did. Michael with the Session Talk Show. We do a lot within the community for just the general population, young adults, children, and more importantly, seniors, 55 and up, 65 and up, several health fairs and senior expos. We'd love to have you guys actually come out and do workshops. Absolutely. Workshops. We host at least 2 a month. We'd love to have you guys come out.
Yes.
We do also. Yeah, we do.
I'm gonna, can you just keep your remark very short? Because we have time for one more question. We're already over time. Mr. Rob.
Yes, we attend those, either giving a presentation or manning a booth. Weather Service can be. Yeah.
Okay, and Sean.
My name is Song Young from Korea Journal. I think we have to consider after disaster, but recently the home insurance is high, and some renewal is denied. And is there any relief from government or?
That's a huge gap for homeowners in getting insurance. Any advice?
Here's my advice. You guys need to cover this story relentlessly. It's going to take pressure on your local and state electeds to do something about it. That's where the change is going to happen. So we need media to cover this story, get us and connect with people, connect with your AARP local offices, and we can connect you to people who are struggling with their raising premiums. But this is happening all over the Gulf South. I'm a Floridian. It's completely unaffordable, and they're pushing everybody into state emergency plans, which basically means if there's 2 major hurricanes in Florida, there's not going to be enough money to cover all of the claims. So this is a huge issue. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Okay, we are at the end of our formal presentation. Let's give our guests a big hand for coming. The start of a conversation.
Do you have a call, Jason?